Dear Christian Mom, do you have trouble making friends? Because I do. It's rough. Whether it's just trying to find time after a long day, doing the dishes, doing chores, after being with my kids. Honestly, a lot of the time, one of the least of my priorities is reaching out to friends and seeing how they're doing. But at the end of the day, I also feel like that is one of the biggest things that can cause me to feel lonely and isolated. And it's of my own doing because I didn't reach out to them first. And honestly, this is a daily struggle. I'm an only child, and so I've always struggled with feeling like I don't really have someone that's there for me, through thick and thin. And of course, I have my husband and my children, but it's just very different when you're dealing with thinking about wanting a friend to reach out to who will always be there, especially if they have their own families. I feel like with a lot of Christian women and Christian moms in particular, we all have our lives and busy moments with our families, especially around the holidays. And, we don't have time necessarily to be, at least in my mind, willing to just jump in and, um, be there in at a drop of a hat. Although I think that kind of vulnerability and loving attitude is the kind of thing that Jesus himself did and asks us to copy. One of the biggest examples I have from my personal life is when my third child was born. My husband had an accident 2 days before she was born, and the Lord was very generous, and he is okay now. But I had a friend who I hadn't spoken to in a while just because of, life. And she's also a very busy mom, a wonderful mom. And I reached out to her and I called her literally at like 9 o'clock at night and said, hey, and explained what happened. And she literally dropped everything. I'm pretty sure she literally got out of the shower and was half out of the shower and came all the way to help me and drive me to the hospital and make sure everything was okay. And I can't really explain how much that meant to me, just because it's just an example of how you can be a friend, and how the importance of friendship is. And I think in general, I really don't have a lot of friends like that, but it just gives me a lot of encouragement and hope to think about that story and think about how I can be a friend to other women. I think part of the issue is that we all have this idea that we need to be a certain way to be a good friend, right? Like, I need to be a certain type of person to be the funny friend, or the pretty friend, or the smart friend, or good homemaker friend. And I think a lot of it is that I don't feel like I'm any of those things. Not in a, like, woe is me kind of way, but I just don't feel like I fit into any of those boxes. And so part of the reason why I created this channel is because if there are people that are struggling, if you struggle with that kind of feeling like I don't really fit in with just anybody, or maybe I feel like I don't have a good solid friend group, it can be really difficult. But I also know that God still places us in positions to provide other people with hope and joy and encouragement through the light of Christ. And that's ultimately what he wants us to do. There's three things I've been thinking about when it comes to friendships and figuring out, looking at Jesus's life, what kind of things we can take from his example and show that with our friendships. So the first would be that Jesus didn't have this giant group of friends. Yes, of course, he did have people following him that loved him and wanted to be around him, but his main friend group were, you know, three people: James, John, and Peter. And that was the kind of group that he really, really sought to invest in and lean on. And even they failed a lot of the time. And so I think recognizing that we don't need to have a big group of friends to have meaningful friendships is so encouraging to me, and also just really important. Number two is that no one is perfect, and this is probably pretty obvious, but the fact is that no matter how perfect that mama friend you have or mama friend that you know at school or at church seems, we all struggle with insecurities and pain and worry and fear and desire to fit in and be valued and feel valued. And ultimately, that is the point. The Christian life is not about perfection. It is about recognizing our imperfections, recognizing our sins and repenting of them and continually striving towards heaven, striving towards holiness. And you can't do that without first recognizing your sin. And this is so difficult in a world that likes to post their highlight reels and perfections. And even when I was making this video right now, I was very self-conscious about filming this because I didn't want to show an imperfect house. But that's exactly why I think I need to show it, because there are people that need to know that there are people just like them that care, that want to know them, that want to have deep, meaningful friendships, even in our adult lives, which can be very difficult. And then finally, this is the part that's hard for me. We have to be willing to be the friend that we want other people to be. Jesus himself said that greater love has no love than this, that they laid down his life for his friends. Kind of butchered that a little bit, but just knowing that that to be the best friend that we can be, we need to be willing to love our friends without asking anything in return and without expecting them to do anything in return. And that is humbling and scary, and can also just be an overwhelming task. But I think once we recognize that it is a commandment and something that God knows will give us joy in our meaning of it and how we do it, can really help us to give us that motivation to do it even when we're scared. If this video has encouraged you in any way, make sure to subscribe and follow the journey and comment below with your experiences and your thoughts.